And we are live-ish.
We're very live. Hey,
We are alive.
we are.
Hello, Internet.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining for another Mirrorless Monday here with Adorama. My name is Robbie Bulilan. I'm a Sony imaging specialist, just as our guest here, Jason Etzel, is. How are you doing, Jason?
We're doing good. Still an imaging specialist, and great to be back to the Mirrorless Mondays.
Yeah, it should be very interesting, especially what we have going on today. It's pretty much ask us anything, especially if it comes down to, Sony things, anything about your cameras, and a little bit of video here. We got some questions there where we'll definitely touch up on it, so that'll be really cool. And yeah, as long as the thunderstorms don't knock out the internet, that's what we're going to be fighting against, right?
Yes, if there is a sudden thing, we don't need to call the Coast Guard or anything. We'll know what happened with all the weather here in northwestern New Jersey. And just wanted to say thank you to everyone who already submitted some questions in. And when we put up Ask Me Anything, you guys came up with a little bit of everything. So very proud to see the range of questions that came in. If anyone has a question that they wanted to submit, you can also put it. I think we have a chat window. We have a chat window.
We do have a chat window.
We have
I
a chat
keeping
window.
my eye on it.
All right, so Robbie will be on the chat window for that for questions. I know it's been a while since we've been at this, so as always, we look forward to seeing everyone out there, around and about, and maybe some events coming up at Adorama soon. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. We actually just got a comment from Mike Dolan. Hello, good morning from Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome to the live stream, Mike. Awesome to have you. Good morning.
All right. Now we just got to keep transversing across the globe so we can circumnavigate this thing.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Mike, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Somewhat of a time zone difference there, so hopefully a strong beverage in hand.
Exactly. We're going to try to see if we can answer all of your questions during the live stream. I'm not sure if we got 60 in total, but hopefully you guys can ask some questions during the live stream. If you're having your cup of coffee, like in New Zealand or something, if you have some burning questions to ask, or maybe coffee at night. I definitely do that from time to time. And Fred Dill, hi, nice to see you. Hi from Fresno, California. But yeah,
Okay.
if you guys have any questions, definitely let us know. Let's see. I have a few things set up as well. I have my A7 IV here set up and ready to go to show you guys some menus or any questions like that. So if you do have any questions there, let's see. Edith Ayala, who is from the hot Miami, Florida. Welcome to the live stream. And
Very hot and humid down there.
And we have some of the questions here where I could show you guys the questions asked. And this is going to be the first one from Mike, who also, I guess we could get started since I showed you guys the questions here. But the question from Mike was to how to use variable ND filters properly and effectively. Good question, Mike. Jason, you
That's
have
a good
anything to
question.
add?
Well, part of me is even thinking right out of the gate, Mike, is this more for stills? And also because we're talking about variable NDs for film. Are we doing something with movie as this will play? We can answer them both, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah.
We can rock, paper, scissors, but how about being Robbie? You are more of the video guy. We'll just go through with a little bit on some of the stuff for stills. I'm going to try to channel my inner Tibby, who is a master of the variable ND filter for landscape. Now, in this case, Mike, for some of the stuff there, ND filter is giving you that nice smoothness for a long exposure. So it's usually very prone for people to use that with waterfalls, something along like the ocean and stuff coming through. You're going to be allowing a little bit less light to come in there, so you're not going to blow stuff out, but you're going to have a longer exposure. I wish there was a holy grail of just, kind of a Sunny 16 rule of sorts when it comes to NDs, but every situation could be a little bit different, and especially with depending on the gear you're using, how sensitive are you to light. But let's just go with the baby steps there. You're going to be dropping in a variable ND just to get some smoothness out of some stuff with motion, and you can go with several variable ND filters that are out there. Sony makes some, BW will always be popular, but you don't have to go high end. Even ProMaster will give you some just to try out on. I would advise some small play, and you'll find yourself from there realizing how many stops you may or may not need moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, with variable ND, the main thing is that you're getting the shutter speeds that you want, and the aperture that you need if you want a more shallow depth of field. So using a variable ND filter, if you're stepping up the f-stops, so if you go to like f16, you're going to get like a weird X image. That's just something variable ND filters have an effect on when it comes to photography. But using variable ND for videography, it's mainly to follow the 180-degree rule that videography typically has, where you want to double your frame rate. So if you're recording in 30p, you want to be in 1/60th of a second. But on a really sunny day like that, that's where the variable ND is really going to work for you, where you can choose your kind of like f-stop, and then you can just keep it at 1/30th of a second using the 180-degree rule. Now, if you didn't have a variable ND, then you're just going to be stepping up the shutter speed. Then it's not going to have this motion blur. It's just going to be very sharp. Actually, I could probably set this up on my camera. I could probably get this a little bit low. Oh, hold on.
Oh, that's one way to go about it.
I'm still rusty on this.
It's been a while, but we're with you, people.
There you go. Hey, let me change the shutter speed for you. So this is right now, I'm on 30p, or I'm actually at 60p on 1/60th, and you can see that motion blur. I'm still sharp here. So that looks very natural because that's what you would see in real life. But if I was to increase the shutter speed, let me see if I could do that here. Manual for video, and 1/400th of a second right now. So now you're seeing that my hands, oh, hold on 1 second.
No,
is it frozen?
not gonna see said hand. Nope.
Hold on 1 second, guys. Technical difficulty already.
This would be a human error. We cannot write this off on the storms.
Oh yeah.
But that's why you all come back, just to see how Robbie and I are gonna forget something on our little pre-production checklist.
Hold on. We got this.
However, a wonderful shout out to Sony's AirPeak, proudly being represented by Robbie's Sony AirPeak t-shirt. For those who are looking to use a drone and any of our full frame gear, and hey, let's just all be kids about it. A drone that can go 60 miles an hour, but still have stabilization, and now recent upgrades for the batteries for extended flight time. It is truly an amazing thing. Maybe one day we'll try to do something, field test of Robbie and I allowed to play with the AirPeak, as one of us has passed their test.
I did get my FAA 107 license, so I am ready to fly. We just need to get that going. Oh, there I am in a very large screen.
Very large screen. Bring yourself down. There you
over here. And
the magic behind the curtain.
Down. Sorry about that, guys. And cool. I think that's it, right? No, I think I'm still over the...
This could be... I think we had some questions about perfection and OCD. So this might be the answer of sometimes how it is a dangerous thing, but you should always strive for perfection.
Yeah. But you know what? When there's something that's always going to go wrong, then it's going to go wrong. So that's going to be okay. But here, I'm actually at 1/400th of a second. Let me see if I could just fix this a little bit more.
Yes, let's do this. Mike needs the answers.
Oh, brightness. Gamma increase gamma, a little bit of contrast, and there. This is 1/400th of a second. So this is that fast shutter speed. So 180-degree rule wouldn't work too well there. And if I reduce it back to 1/60th, let's hope nothing happens.
Big money, no whammy.
And I think we're still good, right? Oop. ISO should probably change up.
Yeah, got a little nuclear. But that's the premise of, you know, what ND filters can do. As Robbie was mentioning, it's that compromise of getting the shutter speed you want, but helping you with those other variables there. So for most landscapes and stills, it's just to get something smoothed out for a longer exposure. But in video, it plays out many different ways, of which a lot of people have put in some of our other venues here on questions about built-in ND filters. Some of our higher cinematic products will carry onto those. Unfortunately, we get a popular question for both Robbie and I is, hey, can these things go in the FX3? Where? It's such a compact unit to begin with. But if you move further up the FX lineup, getting those built-in ND filters is one of the major perks that you'll have.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely. So let's go check the comments real quick. We got, let's see, 10 a.m. is not so bad. It is definitely bad hair weather, depending on where you're at.
Bad hair weather here too.
Yeah. But let's see, let's see. Akiva said, what's the best camera for someone just starting in photography? Great question, Akiva.
Yeah, this Akiva guy is definitely coming to the right source. Don't know if that was in our pre-check questions, but Akiva seems like someone who just really wants to learn. Ultimately, it's one of those things. The best camera is the one that you'll have with you. That's usually the standing answer to any kind of question of what's the best. But when it comes to what's the best one to learn with, a little bit of a caveat. You still want the one that's with you, but you want a camera that you can grow with. You don't want anything that's going to be too overwhelming from the start, and nothing that's too basic. Because you could always get something that would be considered entry level at a very good price point. But even if you're just trying to learn between shutter speeds and aperture, and say the camera doesn't have those capabilities, you can't learn with that camera. In our lineup, very popular with the A6100, A6400, because they're interchangeable lens, APS-C. You could still put on any E-mount lens or adapt, and it has all the bells and whistles. And for full frame, right now, because of some of the current specials, I would lean towards the A7C, A7 III, and A7 IV. Those are some good cameras that you can get the education in both still and video. You have room for growth. And even when you start to really, hammering down the specs and getting confident in your work, it's not something where any of those cameras are not going to perform. So they will be with you for a while. And when it comes to the point of, hey, I need 8K internal, that's when you go see Adorama, and they'll have some other models that we can recommend for you there as well.
Exactly. I mean, for me, it always depends on the budget. If I was on the $1,000, maybe sub 800, there's some really solid ones like the ZV-E10 is a really great one and very hybrid when it comes into photo or video. And it's just extremely capable in terms of getting started. So it always comes down to your budget. The RX100s are very nice since you don't have to invest in lenses, since you have a really great one on there already. It always comes down to budget and what would benefit you most. So if you have $1,000, you could get a nice lens and the ZV-E10 or even the A6000 series, so the 6400, 6100, or the 6600 even. That one would be really good for potential growth, as Jason was mentioning, because the 6600 will use the full frame body like the A7 series in terms of the upgradability. You'll be able to swap out lenses between the two. And I always say the A7R4 or the A7R5, when you're cropped, it's 26 megapixels, and to me personally, that's kind of like the A6600. You both have in-body image stabilization. You both have a lot going on for that one. But yeah, that was a great question. We live in a world
where you have to settle for 26 megapixels. And you know what? You brought up a very good point there, Robbie, within the RX series. If you are into sports and you're into, say, birds and nature and wildlife, take a look at Sony's RX10 Mark IV. It's a 1-inch sensor. It can do 24 frames per second. It is all built in. There's no interchangeable lenses, but you can get up to a 600 millimeter f4.
Exactly.
So if it's something where you're like, hey, that's a lot of money to start investing in the lenses I would want, for an all-in-one solution, the RX10 Mark IV is very solid for you as well.
Absolutely. But yeah, let's move forward. And honestly, another cool thing that I did want to mention, I totally forgot as we started breezing through the questions quickly, is that there's some really good promotions that's going on right now with Adorama. Currently, there is a trade-in, trade-up going on. So if you were considering the A7R5, right now is a really great time to take advantage of that, because there is the trade-in, trade-up to the A7R5, and it's an amazing camera.
It speaks to us.
Yeah.
I find myself needing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely... that's what I'm using for live streaming right now, and I'm just plugged in via USB-C. So it's really solid when it comes to being extremely capable in terms of what I need it to do. But yeah, you could get $300 off. If you're trading in a camera, whatever it gets quoted for, they'll be able to put an additional $300 on top. So even if, let's say, your camera is worth $50, then it's technically going to be worth $350 because they're going to reduce an additional $300 off. And that's going to be going on until July, let's see, was that 16th?
I believe the 16th, yeah.
Yeah. And
So
if you can't, if you're not local, you can always ship it in to Adorama and get it quoted that way. And on top of that, there's a bunch of other great lenses here that would also be eligible for that trade-in, trade-up program. So hit that link that Adorama Events has put in, and definitely check that out. It's a really, really great thing to take advantage of. And yeah,
Yeah,
let's
and
continue on.
some lenses on there too, and currently no instant rebates on an A7R5. That $300 is amazing. But if there's an instant rebate on some of those lenses, depending on when you're making your purchase, that's a possible double dip, everybody.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. So definitely check that out if you guys get a chance, or if you're looking for the A7R5. This is the first sign of a discount, honestly, or a promotional, like, you know, add-on to save. So definitely check that out. But yeah, let's move forward towards the next question that we have, and it's coming from Corey. Oh, not that one. This is the questions.
There we
Um,
go.
so it's a question from Corey. He said, "What the impact will be with AI merging with photography? How to leverage AI to stand out more as a photographer?" That's a very interesting question. Very 2023,
That is
especially with
that is a
how
very
it's going
good
into.
question, Corey.
Yeah.
Uh, well, I actually talked to a bunch of friends as well in regards to AI, and it's one of those that, I mean, we just talked about the A7R5. There's AI in there too. AI
Hmm.
is going to be everywhere, and it's going to bring upon a change, I think, to not just the photographic and the video industry, but really to everything. So it's just a matter of working within it versus working against it. Because I know there's plenty of people, because I'm old enough to remember the I'm never going digital, I'm staying with film with a bunch of photographers when I was working in a processing lab. And a lot of them just, I don't know what the phrase, hung up their cameras, so to speak, at one point, just
Yeah.
because digital was becoming so common. And a lot of them eventually found their way, like, where to try out digital, and, they learned to love it. Let's look at AI as a tool that's going to help photography versus something that's going to possibly take away from it. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to work with new tech. It's just a matter of integrating it, and it's so new. We got to see how it really plays into our field. Although I did speak to several photographers when it first came out, same thoughts maybe you had, Corey. I'm like, oh my God, what's this mean? And
Yeah.
one of my friends had the very good statement. He's like, you think clients are going to be able to explain exactly what it is they want? They'll still need us. AI will come up with an idea, but it won't be what they wanted, probably.
Right.
So there'll always be a place for that human component and creativity. I would look at just using AI as a tool to assist you with your own visions, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, when it comes down to it, we are already manipulating things through Photoshop. So it just needs to be understood as that. And as long as it's not being used for journalistic intent, then I think you're totally okay with AI. And if you wanted to add things to spruce up a photograph, let's say, like you're at a farm and you wish there was cows here, AI could easily do that. But as long as the picture isn't being sold as this is how the farm normally looks, and the cow has no farms, I guess, is the closest way I can equate it. But again, it's more in terms of I'm forgetting of the word to describe photographs that have been manipulated, but it would be in that artistic intent. It starts with a C. So,
Rhymes
um,
with right.
yeah.
When you think about it, though, I think it's one of the first Mirrorless Mondays we did. We did some stuff on lighting and instruction. In a way, we were using very primitive AI then just for setting up our lighting diagrams. Here's how a subject would look with light at this angle, this modifier. So perhaps, Corey, there is a way, as Robbie was mentioning, have that work as a tool for you, but don't let it be the final thing out there. And
Yeah.
let's just hope that they don't say, hey, render me a shot of this person at this press conference.
Yeah.
We're
And
not
honest,
there yet.
yeah. And the thing about our AI, in terms of our AI autofocusing chip that's on the A7R5 and the ZVE1, is it's learning to find the focus. So if it's aviary, different types of birds, there's so many different types of animals. So that's just one way to make sure the autofocusing is nailed, and that way it's able to make sure that that focus is locked onto the subject. Whether it's human limbs and I'm wearing a helmet, it's able to recognize that that's me. And also, that's the Sony A7R5. Anything with the AI autofocusing chip really is just there to make sure that what you're getting in focus will be in focus. And it's been a dream ever since I've been getting a chance to use the A7R5 for things like that.
And keep in mind also, as Robbie mentioned, for everything there in the focus, also it'll do a number on the deep learning for your white balances as well. So
Yeah,
it is
and it's
certainly
very
something to
shockless.
play with.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Um,
need that R5.
Yep,
Have
yep,
to
that's
go buy one.
definitely one of the keepers. But let's see. Fred Dill commented in our live stream here, and he said, "I just purchased the A7R5, my first camera with a 2470 with little camera knowledge except my iPhone. When can I obtain obstruction on the actual use of both?"
How about instruction?
Yeah.
That sounds better than obstruction.
Oh, instruction is what did I say? Obstruction?
Yes.
Whoops.
Our bad, Fred.
Yeah. But honestly, that's an amazing camera to buy and very, very capable. So as Jason and I mentioned, there is an AI autofocusing chip. There's no need to turn it on. It's already happening. As long as you have autofocusing really working, it's going to be working with you. But yeah, understanding what are your first things to, like, if you were teaching someone photography, Jason, what would you try to teach them first?
Well,
And not specifically the things to teach, but the subjects you would go over.
there's a few things that I'll hit. And it was Fred, I believe, I had that question there. First off, Fred, congratulations.
Yeah.
Awesome to you from you gift. So that just locks it in. I got to get myself an R5. I already got the 2470, which is probably one of the better lenses to pair on that right now. First things first, you're coming from your cell phone. Now, we do a lot of classes where, for some people, the cell phone is their first camera. It is what they know. Luckily, with Sony mirrorless technology, there's a lot of things that'll translate out to basically your cell phone. Things like touch focus. Did you just change my screen, Robbie?
Oh, sorry. It was a mistake.
You put me out there in the cosmos. But that's okay. I'm still with us. And more importantly, Fred, I'm here with you. One thing I usually advise for people right out of the gate is you've got to get just used to how the camera is going to feel in hand. So it's just, you sit with it. You could just be on your couch, just getting some muscle memory to feel what's going on. Let your hand start to be like, oh, that's where this button is and that's what this button does. Get some of those base principles just to start out with it. If you have no experience whatsoever as far as photography, don't know the difference between f-stops and bus stops, let the camera right now, the A7R5, use that AI and determine a lot of things for you. No shame in the auto mode. Let it decide some of these things for you. As you're getting the shots, start to look at some of the data. It's going to start to realize, you're like, that's a higher ISO and it looks like this. Faster shutter speeds are going to look like that. It's something where you're coming in on a ground level. This is where you're building up your foundation of knowledge. So familiarity and enthusiasm are some of the things that are really key in your journey here for knowledge, because it's very easy to get discouraged. But I think I speak for Robbie on this one. I assure you, you got the right camera, you got the right lens, and there will be some moments of frustration that happens with everyone learning photography, but you're going to be able to plow right through it. And I believe Robbie and Adorama are going to have some opportunities available in the future where there could be some basic education. We'll have some of those posted out. But if you're close to Adorama, hopefully bought it from Adorama as well, you can always feel free to come into the store on 18th Street and just stop by the Sony display. Sometimes myself or Robbie or one of the Adorama representatives are there at the counter, can guide you through some things step by step to get you off running. And possibly an intro class in the future from Robbie on here.
Or something from the past, because we
Or
actually
the
have
past.
everything. If you guys scroll all the way down, you'll see past Sony event recordings. And if you go through navigating through Alpha with Robbie Bulilan and Jason Etzel, it's going to be over there, and that'll kind of run you through that live stream again. So it would be a really good reference if you want to check that out. But a few of the key things that I always talk to people about when I try teaching them is to know your triangle, your exposure triangle, your aperture, shutter speed, ISO is always going to be a key component. Then your autofocusing modes and areas. And then that'll get you on the ground running, I think, pretty well. On top of really knowing your way around the camera. The Sony camera, especially the A7R5, is definitely going to be growing with you. And then you just need to pick and choose whatever your needs are, because I'm pretty sure the A7R5 is definitely going to meet that.
I think we can agree AFC. That's the one thing. Yeah,
Just
you want
stay in
continuous
AFC.
autofocus. AFC is the way to go. I
have
think
a-
we even have that in the old live stream too.
Exactly. I have the 50mm f1.2, and you could see how fast
Wait
it's
for it.
focusing on for like pretty quickly. Even if I'm moving forward or back, it's able to keep up. And we also had a comment here from Seth, who said, "Robbie, Jason, hey Seth, how's it going?"
Hey, that must be Last Witness.
Mm-hmm.
I got a white shirt on just for you today, man.
He's actually one of the best people to ask. He's incredibly knowledgeable. If you do see Seth around the Adorama floors, who I see from time to time, and the Adorama sales team and staff there are extremely knowledgeable and like very welcoming to answer any questions that you guys have. They're incredibly smart, and they're the ones that answer my questions when there's things I don't know, especially when it comes to lighting or strobes or anything that you really have. They'll probably have someone there to be able to answer the question for you. So if you're local, definitely swing by the store and definitely support your local business. But yeah. Hey, Seth.
That was good. It was like, I like how you mentioned everyone else there, because otherwise we'd get our phones blowing up right now. Seth told Robbie wants everyone looking for me. I'm gonna get him for this.
Sorry, Seth.
Seth won't be able to walk, and Jason mentioned I'm wearing a white T-shirt. They'll spot me in a crowd now. But for all things considered, anyone you want to see Seth, whenever you see him speaking anywhere, he is a worthy sign up for his classes.
Yeah, and check out his content. He's a great streamer, and he's an amazing person. And definitely in like Adorama YouTube, if you check him out, he's going to be the one talking to you there. So say hi.
Yeah, now we got to make an event just so we can hang out with Seth. Maybe we should go on to some other questions. Seth, we're coming for you, buddy.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, next question. We're going to go with Mike Dolan here, who asks us, is there any drawbacks to using touch focus? I would say no. It's going to be depending on like, so the newer cameras that have touch focus and tracking, if you have that set in your camera, that's going to be a really big benefit. I can't really show that on the A7 IV, but it will be tracking in terms of whatever you need it to. So you're going to find that in your operations here, touch operation. And then when I can't access it now because I am using the HDMI port, but you can essentially choose it to be a spot focus, where wherever you touch will pretty much go where you need it to. Let's see, if I go over here, then wherever you touch, it'll populate and it'll autofocus in that area. But if you have the tracking feature, then it will just follow along wherever you touch, and it'll track the subject. And I don't see any drawbacks in that, because it's essentially the same thing as real-time tracking, and it's going to be able to follow along in terms of where you need the focus to be. So yeah. I would say there's no drawbacks. How about you, Jason?
It's a definite thing to use. I mean, there's some days where it's like, hey, I need an electronic viewfinder if it's so bright outside. But there's days where you're like, hey, like today, very overcast out there. It's very easy just to be looking up at your subject, looking down at your screen, and just hitting the touch focus where it needs to go and using that tracking. I can't think of any downside of touch tracking either. On occasion, we will have some questions as reps where people are like, hey, my focus is all over the place. Sometimes it's just a matter of turning off touch tracking, because sometimes you don't even realize you are hitting the screen, and that can cause it off. Robbie showed it where it was in the menu. For most of our cameras, if you haven't customized anything by default, it's usually your custom 4 button. So if you're holding a camera in front of you right now and you haven't programmed or customized anything, you could just hit that C4 button and you'll see on your screen touch operation on, touch operation off. For video work, I really love using the touch operation. It's just too easy.
It's same. I agree completely. Let's go to the next question. We got a question from Lisa, who says, how do you get clients when you just start when you're just starting out? Do you charge when you're trying to improve to a pro level? How do you know what your editing style is, and do you use presets? That's a really great question, Lisa. I would probably say I did do it for free in the beginning because I needed the experience. So in that retrospect, like, I would say that's a collaborative effort, right? But whenever you're starting, just know that your time is really important, and you should eventually charge in terms of what is worth your time as a photographer, right? So I did a shoot where I shot for 8 hours long. We had multiple looks, and I only charged them $50. This was one of my first shoots, and I was completely like not sure how much I paid. But then I also had to edit, so in turn they had a really great deal because I did 20 hours worth of work for $50. So I essentially gave them like $2 an hour. So if you wanted to,
see, Robbie was a nice guy.
oh god,
Travel
calculators
costs.
out.
Hang on, coffee. He
$2.
probably had 3 coffees. That's like $12. So Robbie paid them
Pretty
like
much.
$500 to do the
Exactly.
job. Yeah.
So that was the most painful lesson I learned. And honestly, if you wanted to do anything like that where you would want to charge, let's say $8 an hour is very, low. Maybe I would probably go $15-20 an hour. That way it would also be worth your time. And so let's say the shoot is 4 hours long, then you charge maybe $80 or something like that. And maybe if you wanted to, like if you don't feel extremely confident and it takes time for you to feel confident where I want to charge more, then it'll come in due time and where your confidence will start like telling you that this isn't, what's that? Where...
Should I get the thesaurus out?
Yeah, no, well, it's the one where you don't think you deserve to be where you are, but you have the experience. Man, it's a common phrase, but now
I want to get a pipe out and ask me what you think about your parents next.
But
While
yeah.
Robbie searches for that word, Lisa, you charge what you think you're worth.
Yeah,
So there is a matter of self-worth, which is sort of, I think, the term Robbie's looking for, but even I'm trying to figure out the exact word he's looking for, which isn't good because we share the same brain and I'm a little lost. But you've got to figure out if your question is basically, let's kind of dissect your question here for a minute. Instead of like on the clients, you want to improve to a pro level. So that's the first thing you got to do before even looking at clients. Get to a level of which you are confident to charge what you feel you're worth to potential clients. That's putting in your dues. That's working as second and third shooters. That's like Robbie was just mentioning, where it's like, I just want to learn. I'm coming along to lift camera bags. I'm setting up lights. You're gaining all this knowledge and experience. And, that's something you have to build on. You're going to build your skills from there. And
Yep.
in many cases, in these kind of travels, you start making contacts. You're meeting people. You are a third shooter for someone doing a wedding reception, but it turns out the second shooter has another gig coming up in a few weeks. Would you work as their second shooter that day? Hey, you didn't get paid for this one, but maybe I could throw you $100 for the day or something. You're gaining experience and you're building up this repertoire and confidence within yourself. And at that point, you're starting to ready to look out for your own work. You're ready to be that main shooter, and you want to charge what you are worth. And I know when looking for clients, it can get really difficult because sometimes you're pricing against someone else on the internet, Craigslist. Just remember, Lisa, you are your own shooter. You're providing something hopefully no one else is, and you charge the rates that you're comfortable with. You want to at least cover your costs at that point. So you want to factor some of that stuff in, travel. And as Robbie mentioned, sometimes we just think to get there, how many hours? Well, how many hours are you shooting? How many hours are you
Right.
going to be editing? How long was it to get there back and forth? Did I-95 collapse on you that day? There's a lot of things that go into it. You want to make sure that you're getting your worth from
Right.
it, and you provide for that worth.
Right, exactly. And if you want to get experience too, if you find models or friends who are willing to, I work with cosplayers from time to time. I shoot some things during conventions, and sometimes I'll find people that look great and we want to work out. So for me, that's a collaborative process. And if I'm reaching out to them, then it shouldn't be, I wouldn't want to charge them if I'm inviting them for a shoot to have a cool opportunity like that. So definitely consider if you're trying to expand in terms of your work. But remember, I got paid $2 an hour at one point, so you definitely can't be as bad as me. Just learn from that lesson that I had and make it worth your time, especially if you're going to be working that heavy.
Yeah, and to the last part of your question there, Lisa, with presets, this would be the same kind of approach where looking to figure out how to get your pro level up. Find someone's work where you wish you did it.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's the person that you want to learn from. But the same can be said for like, I really like how this image turned out. How did someone do it? That's how you could also learn that editing style. And if you can
Yep.
make those two things the same person, that just speeds up and expedites your growth towards that pro level.
Yep. And honestly, presets are welcome as long as they fit your style. It's very subjective about presets. I personally like to make it as photorealistic as I can, but others like to have a filmic quality. And if those presets get you where you need to be quicker, and then you can introduce your own style or make it really easy and have a faster workflow, then by all means, if people are happy with your work and you're happy with your work, I think that's the most important. Then go ahead and use presets. There's no rules really. No one's gonna look at you in a negative way, and if they do, then they're very opinionated. I mean, you're your own self, so be confident in yourself.
Or just listen to Robbie and go to Adorama and ask for Seth and do everything he does.
He said bring it, so way to throw him in there.
He's got style and he's got grace.
Mhm. We had a question over here from Casey Jones in our chat. Let's see. Imposter syndrome, Skynet Jen, thank you very much. Don't get caught up in imposter syndrome where you feel like I don't deserve to be like getting paid for this, because people are asking for your work, and so if they're doing that, you're welcome to charge them to make it worth your time as well, because you are a photographer. But thank you, Skynet Jen, for pulling those words and throwing them back into where they were.
They're now in the universe and ingrained into all of us.
There you go. But yeah, we had another question here from Casey Jones on the chat here. He says, can you give me any insight into how the lightning should be for a shot across the road, or maybe lighting should be from a nuzzle neck overlooking the riverbed? I seen 2 last week in YouTube. Maybe it is
I think he means lightning.
Yeah, lightning.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, odds of syncing up with the lightning are usually rather difficult. But we are getting near that time of year where people are going to start practicing out for fireworks. It's sort of the same thing where you're going to have to frame out. In this case, I believe he said he's near like a river neck. Is that what he was saying?
Let's see. Across the road from a nuzzle neck overlooking the riverbed.
Okay. So some of the stuff there, you want to figure out your frame and your shot. Tripod's going to be an essential for this one. And basically, you are going to be leaving your shutter open long enough, and possibly, if you have a Sony camera right now, built-in intervalometer, you can just set up your camera to be like a decent exposure to fire off, say like an exposure that's gonna have a shutter speed somewhere maybe between half a second up to like 4 or 5 seconds, and have it fire maybe every second.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that way it's just you're gonna fill up a card, but it's one of those you're shooting for the average. You go to shoot a fireworks show, you hear that little noise of when they're launching up in the air, and you can get ready to open up for the explosions. With lightning, it's kind of, come on, hoping for it. You're going to be shooting wide. You're going to want a prime with a minimum aperture there to let in as much light as possible to eliminate some of the noise. There'll probably be a little bit of post, but it is possible.
Yeah.
Depending on what you've got, Casey. I would, if I had to go off just on a cuff here, a 24-1-4, something like that. And definitely this is not one of those fill the frame situations. You're going to be doing some crop, but it's like you don't know where that lightning is going to go.
Right, exactly. So I mean, the only way you could really do is like really slow down the shutter and hope that it is there when you're recording. So if you're doing a 30-second exposure, you have some. It really depends on how active the thunder is or the lightning will be. So it's luck, a lot of it. I believe
it's pretty active out there right now.
Yeah. If you're in the right spot, you can definitely catch some now.
Casey, come up to Northwest New Jersey. We got you covered.
No, stay in Utah. It's cool. A lot of great landscapes there.
Yeah, there's more landscapes in Utah.
And
we'll
it's
give
really
it to
flat, so you can see the thunder
State.
from really far away. So that's also really cool. I don't blame you.
But tripod, minimum aperture. In this case, definite shout out to one of Robbie's favorites, but the A7S III would be very good for a situation like this, because you could really play at high ISOs if need be. But it's one of those you're shooting for some doubles in there, so to speak, to mix several sports analogies.
Yep, you'll be shooting a storm with 43 other cameras, so that should be a lot of fun. And thanks for your question. We had a comment from Dan Gallender who said, downside of touch focus, your nose can move the focus box if you use the EVF. Right. So that is going to happen. Hopefully when you're using the touch to focus, you're holding it in front of you. But if you forget to turn off touch operation out of the box, it should be the trash can if you're using your photos. So you can turn that off and on. But typically you'll see that you can't activate autofocusing when your nose activates it. But there is a infrared sensor when your eye gets close, so it shouldn't activate touch operation when you're on the EVF when you have. So it's depending on which camera. Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Pretty talented if you can do the touch focus on your screen and be close enough for the electronic viewfinder at the same time. Right. I have the schnoz. It's possible. But that is why sometimes we, like I was saying earlier there, Robbie and I get the question, and that's why, hey, custom 4 on a Sony camera is usually touch operation off and on, because that's the only disadvantage is people going, what happened? Oh, you got to turn it off because you're accidentally hitting it.
Right.
Although the more I think of it now, and with humidity, and I know we had some people in Miami and stuff there, the only disadvantage is just sometimes trouble activating that touch focus on your screen, because sometimes the ambient temperature and your body temperature, there's not enough difference there for it to be like, oh, that's a warm part of your finger touching the screen for focus. So in extreme environments, sometimes it could be a touch and go. I've yet to experience that, but someone who was shooting in about 100 and I think it was 12 degrees in Louisiana, they had some problems, but they were able to get through it. But it's one of those, I still stand by original comments. There's no downside to it.
Exactly. And I actually just put up the touch operation over here in your custom dial. You could set it up anywhere you want it to be, but you could typically set it up so you don't accidentally turn on your touch operation as well. So customize where you see fit, and you'll be good to go for the most part.
Yeah. And that could be said for all buttons and all cameras. And if anyone has like an A7C or one of our APS-C lineups, just look for the custom button that's going to be right around there by the trash can. So it might have a different number outside of our base cameras.
Exactly. Cool. So we should go forward on to the next question here, and this is from Dan. Let's see here. So Dan said, please explain exactly what is meant by drag or dragging the shutter. Thank you. Jason,
when Robbie doesn't want to leave a place and you drag him out.
That's me.
Actually, Robbie has some great shots because there's times where I just get excited by what I'm doing and I forget we are trained professionals. Robbie, yep, there it is actually. Robbie and I did a shot at a velodrome where all of a sudden we realized bicycles can go really fast with trained athletes. And we were fortunate enough to shoot within the pits and some other areas. And while I'm sitting there, getting some people set up on cameras, I see Robbie just off and about, and it was probably his S3, probably with the 100 STF.
It was.
No. It's a safe bet at one point or another, because at one point Robbie and I did realize we got a little too close to the track and they will go fast. But in this case, dragging the shutter, something there where you're going to get some more motion with stuff coming through. You're not going with that fast speed. You want to go a little bit longer to showcase the motion that would be in there. And that's why also on a lot of our lenses, we have the focus hold button there. That's where it's really in place for people who want to use the shutter drag on there, just because it's getting that hold spot and the motion. Very easy to keep some things stabilized out. But there was someone walking on the track there. My God.
Yeah, he's at an orange vest, so he's good.
But, he's got an orange vest on that one, whoever that brave soul was.
Yeah, so here, essentially, what was good about this situation was that I was just panning, following the bicyclists along the way, and so that's what allowed me to get this shot. There were some, as long as you're following them the same pace, then there's a good chance that you're going to get someone in focus while you're dragging the shutter. So dragging the shutter essentially just means that you're moving the camera, you're dragging along with a slow shutter speed. This one was 1/30th of a second with a 50mm f 1.2, and it's not like, I would highly suggest using a high drive mode, maybe 10 frames per second, and hope that one of them works, because throughout these pictures, they're not easy to come by to be happy with some photographs. Sometimes you don't drag properly, so just keep that in mind. and I was at 1/30th of a second here, so you're probably at a good shot here if you are using that shutter speed. If you want to go slower, it's going to be even harder to get it, because during that time you're following the moving subject, then you got to hope that your hands are just as steady following them. And you could see how, if I zoom in over here to the guy on the left again, you can see how much it's dragging with a person that's staying still, right? So it wasn't that long, 1/30th of a second, but it was long enough for it to have this blurry motion. But if it's following and tracking the subject, you might get lucky with someone actually staying still in some of these shots over here. So
yeah, you'll get a few that come through on this. And Robbie, very steady hands when he was doing it. For those who are looking to start out or their first time to do a shutter drag, monopod, it's going to help out a little bit to stabilize that axis. And this was a perfect example for dragging the shutter, because these are the kind of things you want. You want to show that these wheels are in motion, but the frame of the biker is still.
Yep.
We're showcasing that they are something going. You see this a lot of time, even subconsciously. You look at some of the car ads out there. The wheels are turning, you can't make anything out, but the car frame is tack sharp.
Yep.
It's because they're able to do that kind of drag.
Yep.
So it's something worth playing.
Close your doors. Make sure
the doors.
Your elbows are to your body, touching your
legs out,
your side, your hand over here, and then to your face. That way, if you don't have a monopod handy, you could keep it as stable as you can and rotate your I don't know, I guess your whole hip, torso. And
our stabilization is really good, but
become the human.
You can't go up and down on that one.
Right.
We highly recommend a monopod to start, but it,
Right.
it is possible as a handheld.
Yes, it is. Because that
Excellent
was
question, though, Dan. That was handheld, because you know why? They wouldn't let us bring it into the pit.
It happens.
And you would not be denied.
But yeah, let's see here. Going forward with some questions. That was a great question, Dan. Let's see. We got one here from Ryan. Let me pull that question up. All right, cool. So the question was, I format my cards every time I go to shoot an event, yet the file numbers never start at 0. It always follows the same number as the last image taken. This is difficult for sorting files because it starts over at 0 once you get past 9999. I can sort by image, date, time, but it's easier to sort by file name. How do I fix this?
I'm going to leave that one to you, Robbie. But
Cool.
First off, Ryan, just because the early part of your statement there, and I implore you and everyone to do this, verify the data is backed up before you format those cards.
Yeah.
It's a good habit to get into, to give a quick, hand of the almighty across your card when you're starting something off so you don't run out of space or file numbers being somewhere else. But I implore you, do that double, triple check. Hey, it's on the card, it's on the cloud, it's on my hard drive, it's backed up, then format the card. Too many people have lost stuff that they can't get back. I might be one of them, where it's like, oh, I backed it up. No, I didn't. So
yeah,
format protocol. Yeah.
If you are using a Sony memory card though, like Tough G cards, and you have the MRW-G2 card reader, there is a file recovery program. Hopefully that could do something, but I wouldn't say that's I haven't really formatted a card and tried it just for fun, but I should give that a shot one day.
Well, now that we've said it, we know we're doing tomorrow.
But anyway, to answer that question, if you wanted to reset, that would just be here in your shooting file, over in your camera settings, and you go to file folder settings, and this is for the previous generations as well. This isn't new to the third generation of menu system, so A7. This is the A7 IV right now, but I've set it up on the A7 II as well. But you can, right now it's in file number series, so it'll continuously go up without resetting the number. But here you can reset your file number, so whenever you put in a new card, it'll be able to reset, or you could actually force the file number reset here, and then it'll create a new folder from that series. With reset, it's good because it starts, but it only is good if you're using one memory card per se. If you're using multiple memory cards and you are trying to figure out which one, if you're using multiple memory cards, it'll all start with 0001, right? So if you're using multiple memory cards, I would suggest going into series. That way the numbers will stay current. Just remember to force file number reset in that route. But I have 4 memory cards, and they all started with 0001 during the reset file number every time I put a new memory card. So just be mindful of that one. It's a trade-off depending on which route you want to go, but I would probably keep it in series, and whenever I put in a card for an event, I would just force the file number, and it tells you pretty much what's going on here. Cool.
And also continuity, Ryan, if you're using multiple cameras, and sometimes we are prone to just, dancing cards between them in a moment's notice, make sure you keep it up on both bodies there.
Yeah.
Because that is something that will eventually be the ghost in the machine for you.
Exactly. What I also like to do for setting the file name is if I have multiple cameras, then the A7 IV is 11A, then I know that 06A is a different camera. So I know which camera took what. So I could kind of expect what kind of image quality or file type or even lenses that I used out of memory from that camera if I was just using 2 cameras, 2 bodies during that event. So keep that in mind if you are going into organizing and making sure that your computer is not as messy as your home, then that's a good way to really take care of that. But my house is a mess, and ironically my files are fairly organized.
Those are organized, but I think it was Einstein who said a clean desk is an idle mind. So
exactly, I'm gonna go with that.
Shape. Yeah, let's go with that. You can't go wrong against Albert there.
Here, let's go towards the next question here.
Oh, is this Sergey's question?
Yes, it is.
Oh, hang on. I gotta ask that one because Robbie's gonna have the response. Hang on, he's been waiting his whole life for this one. Okay. From Sergey. I'm struggling to achieve bokeh. Any tips? What is the ratio to get optimal time-lapse photos? Does it depend on focal length of the lens and the distance of the subject? There are some valuable things in there, but let's just, for anyone who's been watching Mirrorless Mondays, say what you're going to say, Robbie.
There's a few good lenses out there. Well, first, let's give the honest answer. I would say lens compression is a very big factor. If you're not getting anything out of, if you're trying to isolate your subject, zooming out is going to be very hard to get a shallow depth of field. But if you step back, zoom in, even with a 18 to 55 f5.6, f3.5 to 5.6, and you're at 55 millimeters at f5.6, you can still get shallow depth of field. You can get bokeh in it, right? If you go with a 50 f1.2, you could get a very shallow depth of field. Anything lower than, you get a good f-stop like f1.8. That's more affordable lens. But again, it does depend on your lenses as well on top of that. And so a lens that's really solid for me would be the 100 millimeter STF, as I've probably said a million times in this live stream. So if you guys have been watching Mirrorless Mondays, 100 millimeter STF is a really, really solid lens here. I have a few pictures from it if you guys want to see some.
You did really good with that over the weekend. Are these the shots?
Yeah, I recently went to a boxing match down in Philadelphia. And let me see if I could show these like that.
Only way it could have been better if it was Sly Stallone in those shots.
Yeah. So this one was with, this was with the 135. Let's find some 100 millimeter shots here. But
they're in there.
Yeah, they're definitely in here. Let me see if I could give you 1 second. I'm going to try to find some.
Well, I pass all these other pristine shots with the 135.
And these are all straight from the camera. It was pretty interesting, actually, because normally the standard lens to bring with you is like a 24 to 70. But the 100 millimeter, it was difficult to get shots with it, but when it performed when I needed to, it was really, really solid. Let's see. I got one here.
Yeah, there is, as Robbie's getting some together there. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say there's no solid ratio for perfection there, but that is a textbook jab right there.
Oh, yeah.
Right through. Guys got the defense down. For some of the stuff you're looking at, Sergey, there, it's the compression is going to be key, like Robbie mentioned, but even if you have something that's going to be the equivalent of like a 70 millimeter 5.6, enough distance in the background, you will get some bokeh in there. Obviously, something with a lower aperture, you're increasing your capabilities. He mentioned the 50-1.8's a solid one to start out with. Also the 85-1.8 that Sony offers. Excellent compression, good shallow depth of field, priced under 600 bucks. That's a good thing if you're doing that with a lot of portraits of people. And when it's coming down to some of the stuff here, you have to get an optimal time-lapse photo. I think that's outside of the bokeh that you're looking for in your questions. Um, if there's a lot of motion, you want more frames to be shot in
Oh
there for
yeah.
your time lapse. If it's something like it's landscape, you could space them out a little bit more because a cloud is only going to move so fast across your sky. But it could be something where you have X amount of people going through an intersection that you're shooting, and you want to showcase that there was that much activity, so you would need more frequent photos.
Yep. And the closer you are, the more bokeh will be prominent, and it's very dependent on your lenses. So if you're using a wide angle lens like a 16-35, you got to get really close to get a shallow depth of field. The 20-70 is really good with its minimum focusing distance. But stepping back, zooming in, that would be the best way to get shallow depth of field. The 24-1.4 makes it really easy to get a shallow depth of field, and being able to step back a little bit to get a shallow depth of field. It really depends on f-stop, the lens and its characteristics itself, whether it's a wide angle or telephoto. A lot easier with a standard or telephoto lens. But yeah, keep that in mind. I hope that answered your question, Sergey. All right.
Good questions.
I got a quick question here, and that one is, let me pop that up here.
Oh, someone call Casey. I'm getting lightning out here.
Uh-oh.
I think it was
not out
Casey
yet.
with the lightning question. Yeah.
So let's see. We got how to shoot Blue Angel at an air show using a 600mm zoom lens. 200 to 600, I'm guessing, if it's a zoom.
Well, if it's just a 600, by all means, just hire us and provide a 600. We'll get there.
One thing though, A7R5 can detect aircraft. So if you do have an A7R5, I would definitely go into that. That way it can just identify aircraft alone. This one is the A7 IV, so it's more limited, but you have more options with the A7R5, which is great. From trains to aircraft, you'll be able to do that as well. Other than that, I would probably go with extremely high shutter speed. Since it's an air show, it should be during the day. And maybe set the auto-focusing area for wide, or maybe just real-time tracking.
Real-time tracking would be very key, especially depending on the flybys. As we've joked with some of the things with the AI that can be found on the R5, it's got all these things, and sometimes with planes, we're like, yes, boats in the sky. It's going to identify that contrast that's up there. In this case, the Blue Angels, navy blue paint scheme, F-18s with a little bit of yellow, they should always be standing out very easily. But on a bright sunny day, even that contrast will still be there. But using like an R5, or ideally the Alpha 1 would be the perfect camera for it. You're not always going to get the shot straight out of camera. Like Robbie just put up some of those boxing shots. They're phenomenal. They're perfect straight out of camera. But when it comes to an air show, you've got a lot of variables at place. Using something with high megapixels, you can crop and frame accordingly, but getting them in focus. And as Robbie noted before, the A7R5 is 61 megapixels. It can crop down to APS-C and be at 26.
Right.
So no matter what, you're getting the range, you can get the framing done. The more important thing is really just to get the sharp shots. Make sure that you've got your focus set at the right speeds, good burst rates coming through. Wouldn't hurt to do a little bit of a possible custom white balance in some cases, because you could have some vintage planes come by and you want the colors to be accurate. And when it comes to shutter speeds, if you got something prop driven or a helicopter, try to get some motion on there. Always looks kind of weird. Looks like you have a toy floating in the sky when you freeze all the props there. And that can be the same for your frame rate for videos. But being the Blue Angels are very much zooms, high shutter speeds, burst modes, you want to get them when they're hitting those afterburners. You want to see that little bit of a cloud going over the wings as they're kicking through at high speed.
Exactly. All right, next question. We got a question from Navjo. And the question is, what is the best option for wildlife photography? I would say...
Stay alive.
Yeah. There's that. You have multiple options, really. I mean, if you're going with Budget isn't the question here, then I would personally bring a 600 and 400 millimeter f 2.8, f 600 millimeter f4, 300 millimeter f 2.8, and the A1. But now we're looking at a $20,000 budget on top of traveling for wildlife photography.
It'd be the best shot of a pigeon ever shot.
Yep, exactly. So if budget is a question here, and I would say you had $3,000 to spend, I would say the A7 IV and the 7200 would probably be good to get you. Well, 7200 f4. It really depends, right? Because $5,000 I think would be solid if you're using a full frame camera. $5,000 to $8,000 budget. You know,
there's a few things to put in a factor here. There isn't really sorry, Navshot. Sorry if I just butchered the name there. There's a lot, as Robbie's mentioning, because depending on where you're going and budget, and ultimately what's the results you're looking for. Because we talked about the A7R5 and its subject detection. That is really real when it comes down to how that works out, especially for bird photography. The abilities to be the bird's eye in flight or identify other parts of a torso. Those are a feature that comes with a camera that is pushing upwards over $3,800. Hence, the $300 trade-in bonus is awesome in those respects.
Exactly.
If you know the kind of wildlife you're going to shoot, I would probably base my gear off of that. That would include not only the lenses for the focal length of where you're going to be and where the wildlife's going to be, but also, am I looking at a sensor where I can crop in? Is it something where I have the resolution to do it? Or even for your own physical capabilities or possibly weight restrictions if you're traveling, you might want to look at maybe one of our APS-C bodies because lenses will be a little bit lighter. You're gaining focal length when you shrink the sensor size. Robbie and I are snobs, so we would go full frame. But I would take a good look at possibly the A7 IV, like Robbie mentioned. A7R5 with the subject detection is great. And our 2 to 600, just because that is an excellent range. And I know a lot of people, and Robbie was even mentioning it, I would also be like, hey, a 70 to 200 2.8 if you can, you know, 400 prime and a 600 prime if we can. The 2 to 600, the 100 to 400 is in consideration there as well. But if you're looking at wildlife, I am somewhat of a scaredy cat. I will not be like some of our artisans in the shark cage. I will be safely on land watching them. So sometimes having the subject further away, and the 2 to 600 gets you close in. It's all internal focus. It's a 40-degree throw to go from 2 to 600. It is pretty much one of my favorites to take out and about when I know I'm shooting wildlife. And it's priced under $2,000. It is a G series lens. You're getting good quality, good construction. That might be a start, but depends on the wildlife you're going to be photographing.
If you're limited to $1,500, get the RX10 Mark IV. That's it. 24 to 600 millimeter lens, f2.4 to f4, great range. The camera, the lens is on the body. It's a 1-inch sensor, but you're gonna be there during the day typically. So wildlife is a really great option. So if you're on a very tight budget and you just want to bring one camera with you, I think the RX10 Mark IV, definitely check that out. It's got a stacked sensor on it. It's a 1-inch sensor, so it's able to keep up and have a really nice frame rate. So there's budgets for everything. So I hope we answer that question in terms of your budget. But yeah, there's a lot of options, especially for wildlife.
If you're with us live on the chat, throw down what you're trying to shoot, and we can maybe narrow down the 7 cameras we suggested.
Exactly. But yeah, we had a poll. Oh, let's check the poll real quick because it's now currently 7:04.
We have
and
a poll?
Said, do you think Robbie and Jason will get through 60 questions in 60 minutes? Of course. No. You guys had a lot of faith on us. You had 62% for, of course, that's easy. And nope, not a chance. The 38% of you know us pretty well. This is our 16th live stream. But you know what? We're going to do lightning round, and we'll probably hang out for another 25 minutes. So if you guys are hanging out, still sipping on your coffee, maybe having breakfast, Mike, we're going to answer a few more questions here.
You don't want the 38% to feel left out.
And we're going to go towards our next question here. And it was a question from Karen, who said, what is the big difference between the Sony 50mm f1.8 lens, which is $250, or I believe $350 right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. And then the 50mm f1.4 G Master lens, which I believe retails around $1,400. There is a big price differential in these lenses. So yeah, what would you say is the biggest difference between the two?
There is a lot to see between the two.
As a lightning round,
As a
can I,
lightning round, go
and
for it.
as a
You have the
person
speed.
of the Northeast who tend to talk very quickly, and you could rewind this if you'd like, Karen, but already 18 lens elements. That's going to be on the 50 millimeter f1.4 G Master. There's also, so your chromatic aberration is going to be completely controlled and practically non-existent, as well as the nano coating that's also existent, so very smooth. You're getting a G Master lens, so the glass is at that nanometer in terms of smoothness. The 50 millimeter f1.8 is a great lens, but you also do not have the construction reliability, where it's a plastic kind of construction, and it's a really affordable lens. The 51.8 is still a great, amazing lens, especially depending on your budget, but the 50 millimeter f1.4 has weather sealing. It's a G Master lens, so it's going to be constructed in a level that is kind of, at the professional level with nothing held back for it in terms of quality. But then you get an aperture ring. You also get the customizable button on the side. You also get D-click if you're doing video. The list could go on a little bit further, but I hope that answers the question.
For an $1,000 difference, there is a Dead Sea Scroll ultimately in the end. So we can say this much, Karen, it is worth it in the differences. And if it's worth it to you, Robbie just went through a bunch of the features. If you are not married to the minimum aperture of a 1.8 versus a 1.4, take a look at the compact G that we have. That's a 50 millimeter 2.5. You will get some more features that might be a little bit worth the stretch, a couple $100 more. I'd take a look on that one. They should be on special with Adorama.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I hope that answers your question. I would say, I personally love 50 millimeter lenses, and I have a lot, maybe 8 different 50 millimeter lenses currently. I'm using the 50 millimeter f1.2. The 51.4 is definitely something I really want to consider getting, because it's more compact without losing quality. There's the 50 millimeter f2.8 macro, and then you have the 50 millimeter f1.8. The 50 millimeter f2.5G is very compact. There's a lot of options in that regard, but yeah.
Honorable mention to the 55-1.8 Zeiss, and we will
Yes.
continue the lightning round.
Oh yeah, exactly. We had a comment over here from Mike in our chat who said, "What old filters shouldn't you use with digital cameras? I have several old ones that I don't see recommended in videos I've watched to date." Mike is using the 88, 81B, Star 8 Dudo are my semi-redundant filters. That's a great question, Mike. I would say, back then, film and digital, the filters or the lenses had a different type of lens elements, and now digital, it's recording differently, so filters are being recorded, what filters have in front of them. I believe it was the greens, if I'm remembering correctly. Jason, if you want to fill in, you're nodding you definitely know.
You are right. It's
Yeah.
greens in there. Yeah. It's because you are basing off on so many things. Those filters, keep in mind, before the age of digital, and all of a sudden we have the ability to do this dark room on our computers at home. You are at the mercy of lab techs like myself doing any kind of calibration that we saw fit. So it wouldn't be uncommon for someone to drop off a roll and be like, hey, by the way, had an 81B on here, had this. They're telling us that these were the effects they were going for, because we might auto correct them. But that was such a balance then of, you knew what your film was going to give you as far as color. You knew what kind of effects you were looking to have vary in there. There shouldn't be anything now where someone's telling you not to use these old filters, but just be aware of how they're going to work out with current glass, with current sensors. But odds are you're not rushing these off to get processed. It's just something you have to implement into your workflow at home.
Right. I would say if you're not using auto white balance, then you might see a temperature shift if you're using daylight because it's set at a specific Kelvin. So that's where I would say, depending on which filters you're using, but auto white balance is probably going to get you, and always going to try to gravitate towards 80% gray, or 18% gray, excuse me.
18, much better. Yeah,
not 80%.
Not 80.
But yeah, I think that would be the best answer that we could give you. I hope that does answer your questions there. But yeah. Next question. Next one's coming from Doug. Let's see. How do you best capture insects in flight?
With honey.
Honey, preparation, yeah, I think would definitely be a big factor there. And then also, A7R5's AI detect does have insects in
It will
there.
have that insect detection, but in this case, also insects in flight. So let's just go with right now, shooting from the cuff there, Doug. You're going to need a fast shutter speed. I'd be working within shutter priority. And in this case, you're probably kicking it up a notch. You'd be borderline, I think, almost macro because we're talking insects. So an insect in flight makes me think you're trying to get like, a bee's wings or something like that going. It's going to have to be something pretty much staged out. The normal rule for shooting fast shutters, every 100 millimeters is at least 100th of a second. But this is going to be a little bit different because you might be like, hey, I'm in front of a flower waiting for something to land. I want to get it in flight coming in. Well, it's a 90 millimeter macro from us. You're going to have to be shooting faster than 100th of a second.
Yep.
So it's something there for insects in flight. The more details, the more we can give you. But right now, just fast shutter speed.
Yeah, fast shutter
that's
speed,
going to be the key.
autofocus continuous, and hope that it landed.
Yep, stack
It's not
sensor
easy.
is a perk too, if you
Yeah.
can for the burst shooting. But speed's going to be key.
Yep.
Insects do not fly slow. And if you're
They do
photographing mosquitoes, tell us why.
All right, next question is from Gary, who said best lens for street photography, both day and night, i.e. f-stop. And I
Ooh.
actually have a favorite right here.
Here it comes. If it's the 100 STF, we're going to have words.
It's the 100 SDF? No, this is the... I have the 40 millimeter f2.5. They have siblings here. And let me put that up the screen real quick. 40 millimeter f2.5.
Move
Very
mine.
compact. And feels like a film camera whenever I put it on the any of like the A7 IV or anything like that. And it has a the XD linear autofocusing motor, so it's very fast to focus, especially if you're pairing it up with a fast autofocusing camera for street. And you're also at f2.5. It's very, it's not a intrusive, where it's not like you're not having a humongous lens on a person like 100 millimeter SDF would do. So I would probably go around the area of the Tough G lenses. So 50 millimeter Tough G, the compact G lenses. So 50 millimeter f2.5, 40 millimeter f2.5, or the 24 millimeter f2.8, I think are really solid. They're all the same size. So I would probably consider getting it. It's $600 a piece. And if there's a nice little instant rebate going on, autofocus, get it.
It'll get there. Wait for it.
Is it too close?
Cover your
No,
eyes, Robbie. Cover your eyes.
There
you go. It is a sweet little lens, and in this case, I'm gonna have to agree with Robbie on this one, Gary. When it comes to street photography, you're gonna want something versatile. Some people immediately go to a zoom, but you're adding size, you're adding visibility. When I do any kind of photo walks for Adorama, and we're doing just like, hey, we're doing some street photography, I like a narrow profile too. I like to be unsuspecting. And Robbie just mentioned 3 great lenses in that series. You have a 24, you have a 40, you have a 50. I kind of like the 40 because you're getting close to human vision, but it's like if I took 2 steps back. Because usually it's one of those things you see it, and then you're like, oh, I got to move back to shoot it. Hey, the 40 already had you there. The 24 is ideal too, but that would be more for just, I'd say, urban landscapes, if you will. Sometimes with street photography, you need something a little bit more intimate in there. You need something with a little bit more compression. So 40 gets you kind of close on there. That would definitely be in the top 3 as far as going out there, and price is just right.
Absolutely. We got a question here from Skynet Jen over in our chat, who said, any tips for double exposure photos? Jason?
Yes. I'm thinking of all the lab days now that I've done with multiple exposures.
Sometimes.
It's one of those when you're looking at doing those kind of exposures, because we've had some questions about similar to this, but not quite when it comes to multiple exposure shots. It's sort of like when people ask, like, hey, some of our cameras used to have panoramic features on them. And for the longest time, I'm like, well, why would I want to use the panoramic feature? It just shrinks your sensor down and down your resolution as you're panning. For me, I've always been one with a lab background. I'm like, I'm going to put in the work. and I would take the shots and I would stitch them together. With multiple exposures, I would pretty much be doing the same thing, where I'd be taking those shots, and once again, just for me personally, I'd be working with those shots as layers to create that multiple exposure versus doing it in camera. As far as how things can be done with our cameras, there isn't anything set to do a multiple exposure in there. I have had some people do some stuff with extreme low light where they're pretty much sitting there in like a bulb setting, and they got their shot, black paper or something going over the lens, reframing, kind of like an old school shot that way to create it. But it gets a little bit, the work has to be put in, is I guess the best way to say it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just so much easier to do it in post, to line stuff up, to change out the opacity, to do some selective dodge and burns if need be. That's how I would probably do it, because there was plenty of times where it was just going out with the roll of like T-Max 3200, multiple exposures. Let's create some ghosts.
Yeah.
But in the world we live in now, it's if you put in the work, it's easier to make these shots out of camera than in camera.
Exactly. I always try to look for textures to start off, and then include that in to fill in the dark spaces where normally you'd have that kind of light. But yeah, double exposure is definitely a interesting and fun effect to play with. So if you guys haven't gotten a chance to do any double exposures, I highly suggest doing that. Even in Photoshop, where there should be apps that will all automatically do that. But in Photoshop, I believe it's just changing one of the layers. So you could just include it into the layer below it.
Yeah, literally create what you want versus, how many shots to get it right. So once again, can be done. Possibly I'd recommend with the bulb there. Good for low light. For bright light, same thing, but you got to be very tight on covering the lens as part of that bulb shot.
Yep. Cool. And great question, Skynet. Thank you. Let's go to the next question here. And this one is from Mark. He said, is it possible to remove video picture profile from raw still image, like a raw still image? While shooting video, I set my camera to picture profile 7 and forgot to turn it off when going back to still mode. Before realizing, I shot a bunch of still raw files that look like flat log footage in Photo Mechanic. When importing into Lightroom, they looked the same momentarily and then got converted to 2 stops underexposed, contrasty images. Any ideas? So that one essentially is that the RAW did what it was supposed to do. It was exposing it essentially with how S-Log would record the image. So luckily it's 2 stops, so it's very recoverable in RAW. But there's really not much else you could do when you're using it through, because you shot RAW and that's how it was exposed. So essentially it was just the, because we're using live view and how you shot it, that's probably, so there isn't any way to really fix it per se.
Yeah, there's no easy reset button on there where it can just go back to, but if this is pretty much consistent from what you've got, putting in the work to 1 to see what's going to get you close to what can be considered salvageable. And it's only 2 stops. You've got plenty of range in there and data to work with, but work on 1, see if you get it towards something you like, create that into a batch action, and then run it on the rest of them would probably be the most efficient for you in post.
Yeah, it shouldn't be flat if you shot in RAW, since the amount of information should be there.
Yeah, you just got to put in the work.
Affecting your JPEG. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
15 stops of range, average.
So I mean, I've worked with a customer who accidentally shot everything in -3 because the exposure compensation wheel was all the way to -3. But we were able to recover the pictures, thankfully, because he shot in RAW. If it's JPEGs and you're working with JPEGs specifically, I don't think you are because you shot in RAW, but maybe input or throw in a LUT towards the image itself. You can upload that information into it and load it up as a preset. And you could go to Sony's website if you Google search S-Log Rec 709 LUT, then you'll be able to get that at least kind of close to what it would be, because it would essentially be a still from a video. So you would be able to color correct it the same way. But you have the raw file, so all the color information should be there. just increasing the exposure by 2 stops, I think, is the best way to kind of
Batch
fix that.
action is going to be it. And if you want the complete reverse to our answers, S-Cinetone. Perfect
Yeah,
out of camera.
use that for photo.
No
That's
work
fun.
whatsoever.
Let's see. Cool, great question. And let's see. This is a fun one. This one
Fun
is
ones.
from Dan. When is it appropriate to use auto ISO?
When you have no idea what you need.
When you're lazy.
Well, you know what? All right, as someone who has used auto ISO,
I do it all the time.
we will. There are times it's nothing to sit there, and there's never a situation where you're like appropriate, not appropriate. Because there could be some times where we've gone into the AI of what these cameras can do, what they can pick up, even what's salvageable off of the files. There are some moments where you're like, hey, I'm comfortable within this range. You can program your auto ISO to be within those ranges. Maybe I want to keep it between 200 to 800, and that becomes my auto range, and I'm safe in there. Could be sometimes people are like, well, I don't know, but I'm on aperture priority. I'm only good up to this. Well, put auto ISO up to that comfort level. And at one point, it's just you'll start to see like, oh, it's going to have to kick up the ISO, but it won't let you. So use that auto as a bracket for you in there to work within your comfort levels. And you could always, if you're like, hey, I don't know what my comfort levels are, I'm not sure the situation where I'm in, if it's even possible, just let it rip on auto. These are the times where you're like, I can have it go this high or this low, and you'll have the files to start to determine that comfort zone for yourself.
Yeah. Whenever I'm very laxy-daisy, if it's if I'm hanging out and not really doing any professional work, where control isn't really necessary, pretty sure I could get really close with raw files anyway if I really needed to fix up a picture. But yeah, I am on auto ISO pretty frequently, and that's why I have that set up on my A7 IV with the top ring, the control wheel with the lock on it. Because it used to be exposure compensation, but I actually set that up for ISO so I don't accidentally bump it out of auto ISO. Because when I bump out of it, then it goes to 50 ISO and it's just really wonky. So that one has saved me, and I've set the bottom button to be exposure compensation as it used to be in the olden days. So that's been solid. I hope that answered your question.
If anything, Mark, that should make you feel better knowing that there's times we've been able to salvage it when auto ISO goes awry. So your files will be in good shape.
Yeah, but let's see. We got some comments here from the people who actually asked the questions who are on the live stream. Hey, Gary, who asked the questions about the street photography. Thank you, he said, and you're welcome. Thanks for joining us during the live stream.
Our pleasure, Gary.
And Mark is also, who asked about the S-Log images, is on the live stream as well. He said, thanks for answering. And bummer to know, strange though, that it looked flat in Photo Mechanic, but much darker in contrast in Lightroom. But that's probably because it was referencing the preview image. Once you load it into Lightroom, it brings back all the information back from how it was exposed, your settings. So anything that's affecting the JPEG or the preview, that's what's going to show in your Photo Mechanic. But once you throw it in Lightroom, all of the actual color data is going to be represented with the settings that you chose in terms of shutter speed, aperture, ISO. So that's going to be what's showing up in Lightroom. Cool.
And also, just kind of while we're at it, we went through this before with the file names on memory cards. Sometimes it's one of those things where, for example, the A7R5, it's a new RAW file on there. It's still an ARW, but it's technically a different RAW file than some of our older cameras. Update the plugins in all of your post-production software. I recently did a demo for someone on the A7R5. We're loading up on my laptop the shots that they took. It's amazing. They can't wait to go home and look at them. They get home, they open them up in Adobe, and they're like, they look awful. And I'm like, you need to update your plugins. So sometimes if you're going between softwares and you're seeing those kinds of inconsistencies, at least have that ruled out. You've updated all plugins. It's importing the file to the best of its capability.
All right. Yeah. So that should be hopefully solves your at least your questions there, Mark. But best of luck. Let's go towards. Let's make this the last question, Jason, because I think it's a good way to end it. It's a question from Gabrielle, and it's who is your biggest inspiration, and do you feel like it has affected the work you create today? if you can give advice to someone who just graduated from photo undergraduate school and just starting out looking for work, what you would recommend they look for in work? With this, they are struggling to find work and need to narrow what is a good job to apply for. Great question, Gabrielle.
That is a very good and multifaceted question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, the pressure's on for this one. Well, first off, Gabrielle, congratulations on your graduation.
Me too. I got an undergraduate in photo. Very good experience that I had there.
It's an excellent experience coming through. For some of the stuff on inspiration, it's one of those, and this would also, I think, go for the same thing with looking for the work out there. You look out there to see what is going to inspire you. It's similar we were mentioning before when it came down to some things for like presets. It's you want to see the stuff that, you don't want to say copy, you don't even want to say emulate, but it's like, I want to do something like this person did. I want to influences coming through. It's like, and that could be the style that they're shooting in, could be how they're editing. It could also be the subject matter. If you look on the Alpha Universe page, you'll see a list of all of our artisans and our collective members, all kinds of different kinds of shooters. Some are wildlife, some are portraits, some are landscapes, some are photojournalism, some are sports. You kind of want to look, Gabrielle, and be like, what is the stuff that is going to keep me engaged and inspired? And once you narrow down that field, you start to see who are the names and the players. Start looking at the history of photography too. Plenty of, online museums where they got a bunch of images. There could be work that was shot like, 50, 100 years ago that inspires you to something. You learn from that. And when it comes to looking for the work, follow that inspiration if it's available. So if it's like you're suddenly getting into wedding portrait photography, find a wedding portrait photographer who's maybe looking for someone to help out, where you could pay some dues, gain some experience, like we said, for those original questions. And ultimately, I always advise people, and Robbie and I do this all the time. Sometimes you find your inspiration, you find the stuff you like to shoot. Find the stuff you don't like to shoot. Find the stuff you never thought about shooting or never even really wanted to. Odds are you're going to learn something by doing it. It could be something technical. It could be something about just prepping for a shoot, but it's one of those you never stop learning. Never just stay within your comfort zone. Every so often, try something completely different, whether it be subject matter, an 100 STF lens, all kinds of things out there that'll just push you, Gabrielle, to becoming more of a complete, content creator. It could be stills, it could be videos, plenty of things, but just always stay engaged on that. And if you keep your eyes open, you'll see there's usually a lot of opportunities around. So I think in your question, you had something about, jobs. It's just you keep your eyes open, you see them. And sometimes it's, hey, no one's advertising, but here's my contact info, Mr. and Mrs. Photographer. If you ever need help,
is a really great way to also get some jobs coincidentally. But it really depends. I would say if you aren't getting any work and you're trying to find it, sometimes customers won't come to you. You have to go to them and find opportunities in that way. There was a lot of times where, for work at least, where it kind of just developed where I would take a picture. The cool thing about the Sony cameras is that you can transfer the images through the Imaging Edge mobile app or the Creators app, and you could get it transferred to your phone and then send it to them right away. That way you have their contact, and then they also see the kind of quality that you have on the fly. And that has introduced me to work multiple times where they're able to see what I'm like, what kind of photography I'm capable of. And if you're using any of those cameras, like Sony's especially, is the Imaging Edge mobile Creators app is a really good way for networking. For me, my influences are, we love photography and we all started somewhere, right? So I really found even like YouTubers, but honestly for me, in terms of my framing, I would say recently it's been a lot of like the anime that I've been watching, where I would see these angles, and although they're drawn and animated, they have realism in terms of how they're angled and how they're posed and the kind of things that work. So lately, the lenses that I've been using, like the 12 to 24 millimeter f4G and the 100 millimeter STF, really great to really accent any props being used, especially with that more like fisheye kind of effect, very wide angle kind of features. And it's been really fun to really practice that Or if you watch any movies and you could see tight shots, headshots. So it doesn't need to be photography in general. You could be influenced by movies, and you just really get to see. So for me, it's a lot of consuming entertainment, even through movies, or Scott Pilgrim versus the World is another top favorite for me, and a lot of anime.
Come
Violet
on,
Evergarden,
say his name. Miyazaki. Come on. You know you love the
Miyazaki,
Studio
of
Ghibli.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Miyazaki. In terms of Miyazaki, top ones would have to be like Howl's Moving Castle.
Howl's
Really,
Moving Castle. Yeah.
great landscapes.
Spirited
And
Away. Yeah.
Spirited Away as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really depends on which route you go for, or like you could also look at the classics, or even with the current fine artists that are existing today. Checking out Magnum. Is that
That would be an
the Magnum
agency.
Collective? Yep. Yeah, they have a lot of great fine artists there as well.
If you're into
Um,
nature and landscape, you still got Nat Geo out there with many of the Sony artisans who are also Nat Geo shooters.
yeah.
It's if you keep your eyes open, Gabrielle, you'll see a lot of things. And Robbie and I both firmly believe in the learn by doing in some
Hmm.
cases, which has also led to sometime, well, we found out what not to do by doing it the wrong way. But that's
Yeah.
also very important because there might be a point where it's like, hey, I was on this job. This is how everything went wrong, but you see firsthand how it is to fix it, how to
Yeah.
roll with it. That's some kind of experience. There's nothing in any kind of book or online tutorial, what to do, when both your cameras die on the job,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
What to do when the groom splits his pants on the wedding day. Well, that one there's probably a video of, but not creative, for a photographer to help out on.
Right.
But there's things that you'll learn just by doing, and sometimes you get inspired just by the shots you're getting, by the process of doing it. Could be travel, could be just you get inspired sometimes even by just editing and printing at home. You're
Yeah.
creating art in many cases.
Yeah.
And even if this is, you just graduate with that degree. So I'm sure you want to start to see some paychecks come in from it. Sometimes the real reward and the inspiration is, hey, the look on the faces of your clients when you're delivering that work. It could be
Hmm.
something framed, it could be a file, but you will find it the more and more you put yourself out there.
Exactly. And honestly, I went to a kind of a meat store, I guess. Like they had groceries
It's
and
called
kind
a
of produce.
butcher.
Yeah, they had produce, and they also ship out their products as well. And they were like, oh, like we're looking for photographs just out of conversation. Like, oh yeah, you're a photographer. We're looking for photographs, and it ended up being something where we were creating for their menu online, and so they needed photographs of that. I said we could set it up out of that, or I would just go to a coffee shop, take a picture of coffee, and find their Instagram and tag them, and you could also meet people that way. But it's a lot of like networking and kind of just like shouting out and working with other companies, and just like if you like the product, then you support it and you take photographs of it out of fun. You could make a connection that way. Concert photography, I kind of just reached out to a band called Ginger Root and I asked, can I photograph your concert? And they said, yeah, sure, why not? And so there's a lot of different ways where you just asking also works really well. But yeah, best of luck to you over there, Gabrielle. Fine arts.
That's what it's something
Yeah.
where at times like there's a lot of, if we knew then what we knew now, I'm like, oh, it'd be the same thing that we all
Yeah.
went through.
Fine arts really
But
taught me, yeah, about a lot about printing and the details in that, because I feel like we don't do enough prints nowadays. But recently, just well, I had my Epson P600 for a while, so I've been enjoying printing and offering that to customers or clients as well. But I've been enjoying printing my photographs, and I think going to college and learning about if my photograph was too cyan or something like that, and that was a really good experience for that in that sense. I don't think I would have gotten it anywhere else in just the standard photo world. But yeah.
to file a negative carrier to make a cool border. Such simpler times. Maybe one
Yeah.
day we'll just have a field trip. We'll call it a photo walk somewhere in the streets of Manhattan. What are we doing? We're looking for inspiration and jobs for people.
Yeah.
But it's if you keep doing it, good things will happen. And we'll keep doing Mirrorless Mondays, and good things might keep happening.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If Gabrielle gets the fancy job, if Casey can pull off the lightning shot and everything coming through, all kinds of potential out there. So
Yeah, we should
please,
have
all let
like
us know how you're doing on your
we should have a
ventures.
place for you guys to submit your photographs, and we could have a portfolio review and a live stream one day. I think that'd be really cool. So I'll talk to Akiva about that over in Adorama, and we'll see if we could get that set up. I think that'd be really cool.
If we're gonna have a review and critique, Seth, you know you're in on this one, right?
That's right.
We're gonna need
Exactly.
last witness on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a few more comments, and then we're gonna close it up. So over here we have Mike Dolan, who said, "Thank you, some terrific tips and gear recommendations." Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. I hope you have a great brunch. Should be about that time, right? Let's see. Dan Gallender said, "Thanks for answering both my questions. Happy to answer them. Thank you for submitting them. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that." Skynet Jen said, "Thanks for answering my questions. Robbie, you actually took my photo at the Anime Next convention last week. I was the OG Vash. Nice to see you again. Hey, welcome to the live stream. Really glad you're
And she
here."
understands psychological terminology.
Yep. Yeah,
Thanks,
exactly. So
Skynet.
happy to see you. And it was great to meet you last week during Anime Next. It was a really fun time shooting everyone. So it was a really cool opportunity. I think I have that picture up here. So let's put it on stream just to give him a nice shout out. Let's see.
Yeah, give the shout out because we'll assume you got your model release when we have a business discussion one day on growing photography.
Wait a minute. No.
We'll need Lynn Goldsmith for that one.
Yeah, let me show you guys the picture we're talking about. And then let's see.
Yes, which if anyone has been listening to us all day, you might be wondering right now, is this Robbie's passion? Well, Robbie really does love himself some anime and ramen. So that's why a lot of his portfolio is based on food dishes and cosplay. But it does
Yeah.
lead to such wonderful shots of people as they're putting in for their outfits. And he did get that sweet jacket from a ramen place where he took all those pictures
I
from.
went there so many times that they decided to give me some ramen. So that was really nice.
You became one of us.
Yeah. So that was cool. But yeah, let's see. Edith Ayala said a critique show. That sounds like a great idea. I honestly think that would be a really great one for our next Mirrorless Monday. So stay tuned. We should probably have something like that coming up. And yeah. Let's see. I have the picture up, and
Was it on the NAS drive already?
no, I need to make that still. But here's the photograph. From that's the OG Vash. Hey, I know you're in there. Big shout out. Make sure you check out his Instagram. Put it in the chat there, Skynet. But really great cosplaying that you did there and worked with really well for that. And that's the 12 millimeter f4 that I used, the 12 to 24 millimeter. So it was really cool to accent any kind of props or anything like that. So I really have been enjoying that lens very much.
Much lighter than the 2.8.
Yes, a lot lighter than the 2.8.
A lot lighter than the
I was
2.8.
out and about all day, so that's definitely one of my main considerations for the F4G. But yeah, thanks again for joining us, Jason. You're always a blast to have on us with us during the live stream, and I really want to appreciate Adorama for being the place for us to converge and talk and allow you to ask these questions. Thanks again for joining. And if you guys get a chance to, if you guys were considering getting the A7R5, there is a really nice trade and trade up going on for it right now. $3,800 retail right now, but you could get a trade and trade up for an additional $300 off. So if you do check out Adorama, if you're nearby, swing by the store and consider trading in and upgrading to the AI autofocusing chip, 61 megapixels. It's been really nice. So definitely check that out, or if you're considering any of these lenses. And again, if you want to quote anything, if you're not nearby, you could ship your gear to get quoted and you could still take advantage of this really nice deal. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys again for joining us during the live stream. Jason, it's been
Robbie?
a pleasure.
Always is, yes.
Absolutely. We got
All
through
right,
the
everyone.
hiccups. But
We got through our hiccups, and is there anything on the poll for just over 90 minutes?
yeah, I feel like our live streams typically go for 90 minutes anyway.
They were good
But
questions.
They were very good questions.
And we thank all of you for them. I must say, those were all very well thought out submitted questions, and we hope we gave some good answers, or at the very least, opinions on all of your questions.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a wonderful night. try to stay dry out there. It's raining if you guys are in the local area. Have a great
good.
breakfast. Have a great brunch, Mike. Have a good day. And
Yeah, we're off to
everyone
New
else,
Zealand. We'll be there for happy hour.
I'll
Yeah.
catch you there. All right, guys. Take care. Have a wonderful
Stay
night.
safe, everyone.
See ya.